All right, welcome back to the fourth episode of the third season of the First and 35 podcast. I'm your host, Gus Cousins, who once again is here by himself. No surprise there. What is a surprise, however, is that the next episode after this one that we'll be recording, and yes, it will be a we this time, is I will have one of my ex-co-hosts back in, tentatively. Ben Jordan will be back in here to help me with our first ever guest conversation, interview, whatever you want to call it, and I'll get to that more at the end. But for now, there's actually a decent amount of stuff to talk about this week. Surprisingly, in my opinion, after the last few weeks, as I've said, have been relatively dead, so to speak. There hasn't been a whole lot of news. It's just been a bunch of rumblings. When will these sports start continuing their seasons? The NBA, the NHL when will the MLB start its season? Yada yada yada. But now we're getting ever closer to teams being able to, start training, start doing all that sort of stuff again. And we're getting much, much closer to, I'm not going to say the end of this whole thing, because we're not. We're nowhere near the end of it. But we're getting further and further along, which is nice because now that teams are starting to, think about getting back in their facilities. If they can, leagues are starting to come together with ideas of how to continue the seasons or how to start the seasons. I.e. for the MLB. But as I've said, there's actually a decent amount of stuff to talk about, so I'll try and keep this one relatively short because I like the shortness of these. I like not talking forever. Not that I even could, because there's not enough content and there's nobody else to talk to. But yeah, so I'll try and keep this one relatively short, similar to the last few episodes. But yeah, there's a decent amount of stuff to get into, so I'll just start right off with the NFL, with probably the biggest news of the last couple days. Was that they released their 2020 season schedule, and obviously they're making the schedule and all these games with the idea in mind that nothing's going to get bumped. The season's going to go on as it's planned to happen, and there will be no issues. I'm fairly certain there will be probably a few issues that they'll have to deal with, although it's so far off in the distance that it's not right for them to start worrying about it yet anyways. But yes, they released their 2020 schedule, so all the teams know who they're playing, when they're playing them, and all that sort of thing. The biggest piece of news in my mind, after reading all the schedules of who plays who, when, how many national televised games are there, blah blah, who plays on Christmas. I think this year it's something like the Vikings and the Saints going at it again on Christmas. I could be wrong, and I think it's on a Friday, so that'll be weird. But the biggest piece of news to me was that the newly acquired Tom Brady's Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they got 7 nationally televised games, which is ridiculous to me. It's nuts. That's the Tom Brady effect that everyone talks about. They get Tom, and then they get Gronkowski, and now everyone's, they're the center of attention again. 7 nationally televised games. 7. For a 7-9 team last year, who, forget Jameis Winston's struggles, they had Mike Evans, they had Chris Godwin, they had a decent enough defense, not good but decent. They had a good offense outside of Winston obviously throwing the picks, and I know you get Tom Brady, who's a Hall of Fame quarterback, yada yada yada, and you get a good tight end who, albeit hasn't played for a full year, but he's apparently healthy. That is the Tom Brady effect right there. A 7-9 team gets 7 nationally televised games. They got a nationally televised game for each win they had last year. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And when I say nationally televised, I mean, Monday Night Football, Thursday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, or the holiday games. So, not the one-offs, like the 1 o'clocks and the 4 o'clocks and the 4:30 o'clocks on the Sundays. I mean the actual, where they're the game everyone is watching. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have nothing against them, outside of Brady, obviously, who I don't like. But I have nothing against the team in particular. I think they'll do much better than last year. Do I think that in any circumstance, in any case, a 7-9 team deserves 7 nationally televised games on the biggest stage? No, I do not. I get the Tom Brady effect. I do. And that's the reasoning behind it. I don't agree with it, but I see what they're doing because everyone wants to see him, Rob Gronkowski to a lesser extent, but I see why they're doing it. But seven games. It's nuts to me. It's nuts. It's ridiculous. On the flip side, and I know I'm going to sound biased because I'm going to use the Miami Dolphins as an example, but just hear me out. On the flip side, the Miami Dolphins have one nationally televised game. It's going to be Miami versus Jacksonville, okay? Jacksonville, a very, very bad team. A very bad team. A Thursday night football game, I believe it's the third Thursday night football game of the season, second or third, I think it's the third. And that's it for Miami. The Miami Dolphins, who, yeah, they sucked last year. At the end, they were okay. They sucked. Let's not sugarcoat it. They were really, really bad. Then they go out and get Tua, who everyone's excited to see. I would argue more people are excited to see Tua than they were to see Joe Burrow. Obviously, Joe Burrow got picked, first. We've went over this however many times now. But I think everyone's more interested in Tua. Do I think Miami should get 7 nationally televised games? Obviously not. But I think Tampa Bay getting 7 and Miami getting 1, an up-and-coming Miami team who still hasn't proved anything. They haven't won. They went, 5-11 last year? They were bad, okay? I'm not saying that they weren't. I'm not saying that they'll go 16-0 or 17-0 this year, however much. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that if you had to pick between the Miami Dolphins, watching them once versus Jacksonville, okay, that's not going to be a good game. It won't be. Even if Jacksonville somehow manages to win, it won't be that great of a game. You'll have maybe Tua, probably not, going up against Gardner Minshew. Yeah, okay, it's Gardner Minshew. It's still Jacksonville. They're still very bad. Tampa Bay has 7. Divvy them up, spread them out. I'm using Miami as an example. I think Washington only has 1. I know there are other teams that only have 1. I can't name them off the top of my head because all my, all the schedules and all that are all coming together in my own brain right now. But one primetime game for Miami, 7 for Tampa Bay. It's a joke. I think every Tom Brady lover and every Tampa Bay fan's going to be like, yeah, thank God. Now we're actually going to get, now people are going to watch us play. Yeah, no, they're going to watch Brady play. If you didn't get Brady, you weren't getting 7 nationally televised games. You weren't. You aren't. If Rob Gronkowski didn't go there, you weren't getting 7, okay? It's because those two are there that you're getting 7. If you kept Jameis Winston, or if they kept Jameis Winston, and they didn't get Rob, they're not getting 7. It's a joke. It's ridiculous. It's all because of one guy in Tom Brady. I get people want to see him. I do. We've seen him for 20 years now. 20 years. It's enough. It's 7 games. It's ridiculous. Let other teams be in the spotlight once in a while. I'm not saying Miami should get 7. I'm not saying Jacksonville should get 7. I'm not saying Washington should get 7. I'm saying spread them out. People would like to see Chase Young. People would like to see Joe Burrow, even though it's a really, really awful Cincinnati team. People would like to see Tua Tagovailoa. People would like to see these young guys. And having 1... I think Jacksonville there's another team that only has 1, I believe. A Jacksonville-Miami Thursday night football game, that's their only primetime game of the season. No, that's wrong in my opinion. You're playing it all out because of where Tom Brady went, and that's how you're making these schedules? No, I don't think you should do that. I know people like Tom Brady. I get it, okay? I'm not saying he should have none. I'm saying 7's ridiculous. For a 7-9 Tampa Bay team last year, that's ridiculous. It's nuts. And nobody even knows obviously no one knows how good Tom Brady will do this year. But he's what, 40, 41? I don't know. I don't really care either. He's old. It's Tampa Bay. They're not very good with or without him. So, in any case, it is what it is. Congrats for Tampa. You're going to get a lot of, time in the spotlight, so I hope you can muster something, because I like Mike Evans, I like Chris Godwin, I like that team mostly. But 7 is nuts, and I don't think anyone can convince me otherwise. Anyways, moving on. Beside that, there were just a few other moves that were relatively minor. The Jaguars signed QB Mike Glennon to be their backup to a one-year deal. He'll back up Gardner Minshew. He's 30 now. He's bounced around. Was with the Raiders last season. I think he threw something like 10 pass attempts the entire season. Did not play. He went 6-16 in his NFL career up to this point. Not very good. I think he started for the Bears in 2016 or 2017, but didn't do too well there either. The Jets signed running back Frank Gore to a one-year deal. It'll be the third AFC East team for him in 3 years. Obviously a legend in the making. I think he's third in rush yards overall. He's 37 now. He didn't put up great numbers with the Bills last year, but he did before he got hurt with Adam Gase's Miami Dolphins in 2018. And he rejoins Adam Gase in New York. Gore will obviously be the backup or the secondary running back because they have Le'Veon Bell, so he'll just get a couple yards here or there. But I think he still has something left in the tank, and he's still an explosive runner, as he has shown. The Saints released guard Larry Warford. He was just a contract casualty. He's 28. He had $7 million on his contract this year. That's why they let him go. He's a Pro Bowler in each and every year since signing with the New Orleans Saints, which he did so in 2017. He'll get picked up, no problem. No problem. As a Miami fan, I hope they go out and try and get him because they still have a lot of cap. I don't think they will. But he's a very, very good guard, and he'll definitely be a big player, on whoever's team he goes to. The Dolphins, piece of minor news, restructured wide receiver Albert Wilson's contract. He was owed, I think, roughly $10 million this year. They redid that contract to where he's only owed $3 million, and then he's can get up to $4 million with the $1 million in incentives. That saves the team around $7 million in cap space. Which would be nice if you go use that money and now go and get Larry Warford. Obviously, they were two completely unrelated transactions, but I'm just saying, now that you have even more money, maybe go and get this guy. That would be nice. Another piece of Miami Dolphins news, this time in a very sad regard. Former head coach Don Shula passed away on Monday of last week. He was the winningest head coach of all time in the NFL. Spent 26 seasons as Miami's head coach and play caller. He was inducted into the NFL Hall of Fame in 1997. Over his career with 26 seasons with Miami, he went 257 to 133. He was the coach of the Dolphins during their famous undefeated season that year. He was 90 years old, and unfortunately he passed away. The greatest coach, in my opinion, of all time. Winningest. He hung around the league forever. He was a great guy. Everybody liked him. He put winning team after winning team out on the field for Miami mostly. And that's where he ended his career with the Miami Dolphins. And I think he did such a fantastic job. It is so incredibly tough to have 26 straight seasons with a team as your head coach, as we've seen over the last few years. These guys getting fired, these guys getting let go. And I think you have to be really, really something special. And Don Shula was. He was a great guy, great coach, Hall of Fame, obviously, as I mentioned. There's too many accolades to run through all of them under his name. So I think I'll just, leave it as that. At that, it was sad. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but yeah, he was a great coach, and I think that's what people got to remember, that he was the winningest coach of all time, and he was a fantastic person. Everyone liked him. Moving on to another piece of Miami news. I know it sounds like I'm, harping on the Dolphins here, but, they're really giving out a decent amount of news recently. Miami's plan. So I should preface this with the idea that the NFL season will go on as if, it's completely normal. That's ridiculous. Things are going to happen. Will there be fans in the stands? I don't know. I don't know how any of that will happen. However, Miami apparently has come up with a tentative plan to propose to the league to allow fans in to watch their football games. So their idea is as follows. They would have a maximum of 15,000 fans in the stadium per each home game. They would obviously be spread out section by section, row by row, yada, yada, yada. To get them into the stadium, they would use a variety of entrances so that fans will obviously be 6 feet apart lining up and all that. They wouldn't have to come into contact with each other. You would pre-book an arrival time and enter the stadium by row. So what that means is, let's say hypothetically I'm in row 1. I have a seat in row 1. I would go in there and sit down before someone in row 15 goes in, right? You would go work your way up so that you wouldn't have to come in contact with those people either. in terms of ordering food and concessions, it would be mobile ordering, and you would get an alert as to when you should go pick up your food from the stand. They would spread these out too all throughout the stadium so that you wouldn't have a lineup of 20 people waiting, to get chicken fingers and fries. You would go up one by one, you would pick up your food, and it would go like that. I think that's a great idea. I don't know if anybody will go for it, but I think it's nice that Miami, and I'm sure other teams have come up with similar ideas. I think it's good that teams are starting to think about this thing now. I think it's good to have a plan going into it so that when you know exactly what's going to happen. You know how you want it to work, and you'll understand, what the problems might be, what things might happen, and so forth. And then the last piece of NFL news that's just, I thought was ridiculous and funny, is Jay Cutler. So he's now retired, made hundreds of millions of dollars as a quarterback, good-looking guy. He was married to a woman named Kristen Cavallari, and recently Kristen Cavallari announced she was divorcing Jay Cutler for quote-unquote being lazy and unmotivated around the house. And then so she tried to play the victim card and all this, and I think near the end of this, news also broke that she was telling Jay Cutler, like, oh, you gotta go get a job, oh, this and that, and then she wanted $5 million to buy a house or something like that. I don't know all the details, but it's ridiculous to hear about. And obviously Jay Cutler playing football his entire career, his entire life really so far, and just recently, as we know, he's moved on. He's left the league. So I think it's insane for this woman to try and play the victim here, making this everything public, making it a big deal. Jay Cutler's going to be fine. If he wants to be lazy and unmotivated, I don't even think he is. I think that's just a straight up lie. But even if he wanted to be, I think it's probably fine if people let him, because he worked his butt off. He was ridiculous. He put so much time and effort into the NFL and playing quarterback wherever he was that I think, yeah, he deserves some time off. I know I'm talking about this as if, it's a serious issue, and it's not. It's very, very minor in the grand scheme of things. I just think that this Kristen Cavallari is a bit of a joke, and I think Jay Cutler will be fine. I think most of social media is on Jay Cutler's side on this, and I don't think he's lazy and unmotivated anyways. I think he wants a break, and I think that's perfectly fine given the situation that we all find ourselves in right now. Moving on to the NHL. It is the only league where there's really not a whole lot of drama going on outside of Brendan Leipsic, who I will get to shortly. The Ducks re-signed Christian Hughes to a 1-year, $1 million deal. He's a defenseman. He's 25. He only played 9 games for them last year, but he put up 3 points, a goal, and 2 assists. The Leafs signed defenseman Mikko Lehtinen to a 1-year deal. He's 26. He put up 17 goals and 32 assists for 49 points in 60 games in the KHL. He was widely regarded as the best defenseman playing in Europe, and the Toronto Maple Leafs got him, which is nice. Defenseman scoring is always nice. Now, later on, i.e. the next episode, wink wink, we'll talk more about this with our guest. But Mikko Lehtinen is an offensive defenseman, and the Leafs, lo and behold, with this, will have a surplus of defensemen. They will have, in no particular order, assuming Barry goes, they'll have Riley, they'll have Muzzin, they'll have Liljegren and Sandin, they'll have Hull, they have Dermott, that's 6, and now they'll have Mikko Lehtinen. And I don't think he's 26, he's not going to the AHL. I really don't think he's going to the AHL. So if you slide him in there, you'll obviously have, I'm not making pairings or anything, I'm just saying who they have. They'll have Riley playing, they'll have Muzzin playing, they'll have Mikko Lehtinen playing, I would imagine Justin Hull's playing, that's 4, and then you have 3 spots for 2 guys. So, it's tough. I would say Travis Dermott's probably the odd man out in my opinion. He's an RFA. You can let him go. You can see if you can get anything for him. I think Hall's cheaper, I believe. Mikko Lehtinen is cheaper than what Travis Dermott would want on an RFA deal. So I think that would be a catch-22 that they would be in. You have too many guys for not enough spots. And not that these guys are all ridiculously great, they're not. But you would miss Dermott. You would miss Hall. You would, obviously, now that you have Mikko Lehtinen, he's going to play. You're not messing around with Riley or Muzzin. So then what's left for you to do? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the defensive core works out over the next year and a half or so. The Sharks signed goaltender Alexei Melnichuk to a 2-year deal. He's 21. He was undrafted. He put up a 1.68 goals against average and a .930 save percentage in 16 games while playing for the St. Petersburg in the KHL. Obviously San Jose has Aaron Dell and Martin Jones there right now, but, putting up great numbers like these, even in a small amount of time in 16 games. He's only 21, and, he'll fill a spot. You'll see what you can get from him, and he's going to be extremely cheap. The Panthers signed Grigory Denisenko to a 3-year entry-level deal. He is 19 only, very young. He put up 6 goals and 6 assists for 12 points in 38 games. In the KHL, he was the captain of Team Russia in the 2020 World Juniors. Very highly regarded as an offensive guy, great all-around player. So it'll be super cheap, and I think he'll make his way through the Panthers system, I think, fairly quickly if he keeps on his pace. Not the 6 goals, 6 assists pace, but what he was putting up, in the juniors before. He had a great tournament for Russia in the World Juniors. The Canadians also signed a Russian. They signed Alexander Romanov to a 3-year deal. 3-year entry-level deal. Excuse me. He's 20. He's a defenseman. He played for CSKA Moscow last year in the KHL. 3 points in 7 games. Didn't do a whole lot, but obviously he's another guy that they really, really like, and he's only 20. And the only piece of drama that I mentioned that I don't want to talk too much about because it's just ridiculous is that the Capitals finally terminated Brendan Leipzig's contract amid the whole, him being an a-hole over private messages and all that, which you shouldn't do. It's just stupid. You shouldn't be like that. It doesn't matter if they're private or public. You shouldn't say things like that. It's ridiculous. He was barely a fringe NHL player, a former Leaf. I think he was taken by the Vegas Golden Knights in the entry draft. It's a joke. I think this is his farewell party. He ain't getting back in the league, I don't think. He just seems kind of just like a dick. Like, you don't want that around. And obviously, I'm not going to go through all the comments that he made online because they're just so, horrid and all that I don't want to talk about it. But, it's ridiculous. Everyone knows, what he did now that it came out. Probably the shortest press release of all time by the Capitals Twitter account. 1 sentence long only, saying we're terminating his contract effective immediately. And that was it. So they got that done and out of the way. I don't think it'll be the end of Leipzig's, the drama behind him. But I think as far as him playing in the NHL, he will be done. Jumping to the MLB. This was actually probably the least amount of news out of, all the major sports league recently, just because they're going to deal with them trying to start the season. They're not dealing with completing it, they just want to get it going. But first off, news broke that Alex Rodriguez and his wife, Jennifer Lopez, dropped out of the bidding for the New York Mets, who are obviously for sale. They couldn't pull together enough investors with enough money, so they said, screw it, we're done. That whole thing, I don't know too much about it, but I know the Mets are trying to sell it. I know the Wilpons are a joke who own it, and it's just utterly terrible. I feel bad for every Mets fan there. So they're trying to get this. I think Steve Cohen might jump back in. He was in the bidding a little bit and then left because, things didn't work between him and the Wilpons who he was talking to. But I think Steve Cohen may jump back in and, get something going. Anybody but them, really, at this point, to run the Mets. Piece of sad news is that former Oakland Athletics minor leaguer Miguel Marte, it was announced that he passed away from the coronavirus, which is obviously the biggest issue on the planet today. Wasn't playing for them. I don't even think he was playing baseball anymore, but I could be wrong in that regard. But yeah, so it's unfortunate to hear about that. It's just another major, sports athlete that, succumbed to the coronavirus, and that just shows, how every day the numbers keep adding up, and these losers out there who are still trying to run their lives in the U.S. and open these places, and these moronic governors that are trying to, get the economy back going, it's nuts, it's ridiculous, and you end up with people like this who are, their lives are taken from them because not everybody is acting the way that they should. And that's another discussion for another day, I guess. But it's just it's so terrible to see these things, and everybody that doesn't get named, the hundreds of people every day, the thousands of people every day that get sick, that die, that have no name, to what happened to them, and it's just it's almost insulting to that extent. And it's ridiculous because it's really all falls back on the people who are not taking this seriously, and I think that's obviously the biggest issue in terms of dealing with this pandemic. In terms of, as I mentioned, the MLB thinking about, when are we going to get things going? Where is it going to happen? All that. The latest rumor was that the MLB was possibly looking at a mid-June return. Now, we don't know if that's like, hey, you're going to start playing mid-June, or, we're going to try and get you training mid-June, and then come July, that's when we're going to get around. I think that's likely the idea. It's that mid-June, guys are going to start working out, training, getting back in, game shape, and then start of July-ish, we're going to start trying to play these games, obviously with no fans. The thing with that is that the Blue Jays obviously will not be playing in Canada. They will be playing in the U.S. The whole borders closed between us and the Americans. So I would think, report service, maybe they go back down to Dunedin. I doubt it because that governor is a complete lunatic down there, and it's still a hot spot for this. I don't think Florida is an option. Is Buffalo? Can they play at Coca-Cola Field in Buffalo? Maybe. Can they play at another, one of their fields that isn't, owned and operated by them? Probably. It really depends where they want to, cluster up these teams and players, where they want to play. And I think that's, we're getting closer. There were reports that, they were going to offer, the MLB was going to offer the Players Union, an idea on how to get this all started up. Some point this week, next week, I should say. And I guess we'll just have to wait to see the results of that. And then when details start leaking and it, a stream turns into a lake, and then everybody starts figuring out what's going on, I think that'll be the best plan in terms of, talking about what's going to happen, what could happen, and all that. And then the latest piece of news was that MLB's draft will be shortened by 35 rounds. Yes, you heard me right. That's 35 rounds slashed. Ain't happening. There will only be 5 rounds this year. Obviously, as opposed to the 40 every other year of really existence. An undrafted free agent, so if you were not signed or you're not picked in the 5 rounds and you're, just some guy, the max you can sign for is $20,000. The draft will happen on June 10th. Obviously, it results in a variety of complications and, areas of interest, mainly because of all these players that will not get drafted simply. They just won't this year. Now, I know they get another year of eligibility to play, next year for their college teams or whatever. I get it. It does push them back. It is only a year, I get it, but it's a big deal for these guys. If you're not a high-end talent in the U.S. or wherever, it's just unfortunate because your year has been slashed. You just won't have, and 20,000 is ridiculous. I get it. They're losing money, so they want to, make it reasonable. You're not going to live on $20,000 as a minor leaguer, undrafted free agent. You're not. It won't work. It won't work. So I don't know what the deal with that will be, but, it happens. And, it's just, it's so obscure, because it's never happened before. It's just so weird. It's so weird to me. And I know it's the whole money thing, the economy and all that, and teams are losing tons of money. But, you gotta figure it out. I guess this is one way to do it. I guess it is, but it's not the way I would have done it. Slashing 35 rounds off is not the way I would have done it. And I know it's tough. I get it. There's more important things out there too. But it's throwing these kids back to college, and to play college ball. And it's just bumping them back. It's bumping them back from the ability to get drafted to start their career. And everybody says, well, you can still do it just for $20,000. It's a joke. $20,000 is nuts. it ain't gonna happen that way. And I guess we'll see on June 10th what happens. So with that all being said, I've said for quite a few weeks now, I'm going to try and get guests or somebody to talk to. Especially with the fact that, both my 66.6% of the team ditched me a couple weeks ago, and I'm on my own now. So I said I'd be trying to get guests. I believe we'll probably have... I'm recording this on, the 10th? Is today the 10th? Or the 9th? Whatever it is today. I'm recording it on Saturday. And, obviously I'm going to try and edit this and put it out. I've had tech issues all day. It's just been a real pain in my ass. But I'll get this one out. And then next episode, whenever that is, we will have a guest on. And that guest will be, you may know him from Overdrive as Al's brother. On Twitter, Mickey_Canuck. It'll be Michael DiStefano, who will be joining us next week to talk to us about, the whole Leafs, the hockey world, and all that going on. And it'll be great. We'll finally have someone in studio, or not in studio, what am I saying? Over Skype, probably, if I can get it to work. And I think that'll be exciting. Ben will be back in, as I mentioned, so I'll finally have two people to talk to this time. And I think it'll be super interesting. I emailed Al's brother, and I'm going to keep referring to him as that until I introduce him next week, just because I love that name. And, I wasn't actually expecting him to say yes, but there he is, and he's like, okay, we'll do it. And then I texted Ben, my co-host, and he's like, yep, I'm going to be up for this. So, amidst my efforts to try and figure out this Skype call, I think it'll be fun to actually have someone who knows what they're talking about. In Al's brother, who we'll be able to chat with. And obviously, it won't be anything too deep. It'll be over Skype call. I did a practice run this morning, and it hasn't turned out overly well, so I gotta, hop on after this and edit this podcast, and figure that out, and make sure everything's all set up. I think we're gonna record Tuesday afternoon. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting. So obviously, with Michael here, we'll get through, his thoughts on, the NFL schedule release. We'll get through Mikko Lehtinen, what he thinks about the Leafs decor. He's the host, I should say, of the Locked In Leafs podcast. You can find that wherever you get your podcast. For me, it's on Spotify. I highly recommend it. It's very interesting. He knows what he's talking about. I think if you are a Leafs fan, it'd be a really, really interesting listen. Just because there's not a whole lot going on, so you can find these guys. You can find these podcasters, these hosts who know exactly what they're talking about, but they're just not the biggest. It's not Sportsnet, it's not TSN, it's Al's brother. And I think you really, really gotta... I just think it's great that you should go and listen to it. Not that anybody listens to this one, but you should definitely go listen to the Locked In Leafs podcast. And we'll have Michael in to talk to at some point next week, and I think that'll be exciting. Well, as I've said, it'll be probably mostly hockey to talk to him about, because he knows his stuff. I'm out of the three of us, when we have Michael on one end, and my co-host Ben coming back for an episode, and then me. They're probably the two most knowledgeable about the NHL. I think we'll probably also get into the TSN's mock drafts with Michael, just to talk about, obviously the whole Alexi Lafreniere, Quentin Byfield, all that sort of thing. They know more of that than me. But I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be fun. I still am trying desperately to get Romano and or Bass, so maybe that'll happen in the weeks after we talk to Al's brother. So I think this week I think I'm just running over just over half an hour right now of talking to y'all, but I think it's good. I think there'll be enough content that'll be a really interesting conversation. It'll be the first time that Ben or I actually talk to a quote-unquote guest. Hopefully we don't bore Al's brother to death with our inane questioning of everything. So I think that's about it for this one. And I think I can say I can't talk. I think I can say with absolute certainty that you will hear from me next week.